Lesson 55, Subjects. In this lesson, there is no Greek at all. This is just simply a lesson to give you some grammar knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
As you go along learning some of these ancient languages like Latin or ancient Greek, it really pays to know some basic grammar as you go along.
Definitely.
And if you're reading a textbook or any kind of language teaching materials, you're just going to get a lot more out of it if you know what some of these terms mean, like what's the subject of a sentence, the direct object.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we go along in this book, I don't want to only just throw Greek at you. I also want to equip you to know some of the grammatical terms that you'll need to know to work with the language and to work with language materials. So in this lesson, we're talking about the subject of a sentence and what that is, and we're going to let you practice with it a little bit.
And as our listeners become more and more advanced, the materials they'll be reading will be more and more full of grammar talk. And so it really does pay to start learning or start reviewing these terms up front.
So we're equipping you to work with the language, to work with the grammar. And so I have really a very simplistic definition here of what a subject is. I say the age-old definition of a noun. A noun is a person, place, or thing. And then my definition that I give here of a subject, it's really a little bit oversimplified, but I think it's a good starting point for an absolute beginner.
And it doesn't need to be excessively complicated at this point. As our listeners get further along in their Greek, they'll encounter different kinds of sentences that require a slight nuancing of the definition of a subject. But right now, this is really all that's needed.
Right. This is just for beginners to sort of introduce you to the topic of what is a subject of a sentence. And so basically, in this, very simple definition, the subject is the party in the sentence, the person, place, or thing, that is doing the action in the sentence. And Catherine, for me personally, when I explain this to a beginner, I like to do it making a distinction between verbs of being and action verbs.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have a verb that is just, someone being something, or you can have a verb where someone's doing some kind of visible activity like running or working. And we see both kinds of sentences here in lesson 55. So in number 1, the subject of the sentence is the word I. The verb is am, and so the I is the party in the sentence that's doing something. They're being something.
Right. Same for number 2 with you are. You is the subject of the sentence, and are is the verb, but again, it's a verb of being. It's not that the subject you is doing anything in particular. It's just you are.
Number 3, she is tall. She is not really doing anything. She's just being something, being tall. But in number 4, the subject of the sentence is Fred, and Fred is actually doing something. It's kind of an intellectual activity, liking something.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes beyond just merely being something. So the subject here is Fred. And as long as we're here, might as well point out that the verb is likes.
Right.
In number 5, the subject is Chicago. And what's it doing? It's just being something. It's just being a big city. In number 6, we have an action verb.
In number 6, the action verb is having. It's not necessarily that anything big is happening. It's just that the children are doing more than just existing. They possess ice cream cones. So the children are the subject and the verb is have.
Same with number 7. The car is the subject, and it's doing something in the sense that it has something. It has a flat tire.
Mm-hmm. But in number 8, we're back to a verb of being, where the oatmeal is not doing anything in particular. It just is too hot. It is. So oatmeal is the subject and is the verb.
Same thing in number 9. Switzerland is the subject, and it's just being something. In number 10, though, we have an action verb. Grandfather is the subject, but he wears, that's the verb, he wears the coat. So that's an action verb. So the takeaway here for this lesson is to identify the subject of a sentence. That's the party that's doing or being something in the sentence. And as a little bonus, we also mentioned the difference between action verbs and verbs of being.
Mm-hmm. One other thing that the listeners might pick up from this particular lesson is that even in English, where word order makes a pretty big difference, the subject is not always the first word in the sentence. So particularly in sentences like, on Tuesdays and Fridays, Fred likes to go jogging, or in the winter, grandfather always wears his old brown coat, the subject was way later in the sentence than the first word.
Right, and I constructed those sentences for that very reason, to make the reader have to look around a bit more for the subject.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. You can't assume that the subject of the sentence is going to come first, and especially, Catherine, in ancient Greek.
Definitely.
The subject of the sentence could be anywhere. I mean, literally anywhere.
It could literally be the last word in the sentence. Sometimes it is.
So we'll circle back around to this topic of the subject of a sentence. We're not done with the idea of subjects.